Yes, welcome back to Home Studio Q&A here on Studio Live today. My name is Pete, and this is our show where I answer your questions about mobile recording, home recording, microphones, audio interfaces, GarageBand, you name it, we talk about it. If it's in the realm of music and video and content creation, we're going to chat about it here. If it's your first time here on the channel, my name is Pete, and if you go over to studiolivetoday.com, you can find all the ways that you can get in touch with me. You can check out my gear guide and how to follow me on social media. All of those good things are over at studiolivetoday.com. We will jump into some questions in just a moment, but every week here on the show, I have a feature topic that I like to talk about. And this week, we'll be talking about musical motivation. So let's jump into that. When you've got unlimited amounts of time, you would think that getting motivated to create music would be super simple, yeah? It cannot always be the case. So I'm going to give you my 3 best practical tips about staying motivated with your music. Now, number 1 is to chunk it down. So what do I mean by this? There's a thing that your brain does called overwhelm. Have you ever felt this? I know I have. So when you're trying to get motivated to create music, to record music, to write a song, to do anything really, what tends to happen is you think, right, I want to record an album, or I want to record an EP, or even I want to record a song. And your brain says, to do that, you need to do this and this and this and this and this. It's too hard. I just don't want to do it. I just want to go and sit on the couch and watch Netflix and drink beer. So that's what you do. Instead of doing some of it, because your brain says, I can't do all of it, I'm not going to do any of it. So here's the practical tip. Chunk it down. Make sure that you work out what is the smallest piece of this puzzle that I can do today that will make me feel good and make me feel like I'm progressing. So when it's a song, don't think I have to finish a song. That's going to make your brain go, check out. If you just say, I want to write 8 bars of a song. I want to get an idea for a hook down in the next hour or next half an hour. I want to write the first verse of the song. Make sure it is an achievable chunk. And then, you know what happens when you build up and you do a bunch of different chunks in a row? They turn into a whole big project. So this is the thing. The way to hack your brain when it comes to motivation is don't think, and a lot of people say you need to goal set. You need to have the end, start with the end in mind. And I agree with a lot of that stuff. But when you are seriously struggling to even get started and you don't know where to start, give yourself a simple, achievable task, a goal that you can actually get done that's going to lead to the rest of your stuff. So that's tip number 1. Tip number 2, this is probably my favorite thing to do. Have you ever had that situation where you're sitting down, you're like, right, music time, let's do this. And then nothing comes. You've got no ideas. You've got a blank page, a blank screen, you're not even strumming your guitar, whatever it is, because you're like, I don't know what to do. Here's a tip, speed thinking. What is speed thinking? I've talked about it before on the channel if you've been around a while. It is the process of getting into your brain and making it get out this stream of consciousness of ideas. How do you do it? Super simple. Get 1 minute on a timer, use your phone, use your watch, use whatever. 60 seconds is what I like to use. You can use 30 or you can use 2 minutes, whatever. Get one idea, one item, one noun, one concept. So I'm looking around here and I'm like, light, I've got up there, phone here. Let's go with phone. What you do is you go 60 seconds on the clock, you hit it, and then you go everything you can think of related to that topic. So I'd go phone, communication, calling, reaching out, loved ones, connecting with people, phone ringing, advertising. Oh, those nuisance calls you get when you're trying to, just do your thing and then someone spamming you, spams and scams, taking advantage of people. Like, you can see where this goes, right? Within 60 seconds, your stream of consciousness will take you on this magical journey. And at the end, whether you use a paper and pen, or a keyboard, type it all down, or you record yourself, you're going to have so many ideas. You're going to have like 3 songs worth of ideas. So especially if you're a songwriter, especially if you're stuck with lyrics and vocals and that sort of thing, using speed thinking can be good. It can even be good for non-lyrical type things. So you can just start doing that. Like there's a different part of your brain you tap into when you're under pressure and when you've just got a limited amount of time. The problem is when you've got unlimited time, it tends to actually have the reverse effect. You don't move quickly enough because you feel like you've got all the time in the world. That's number 2. Number 3, and you're going to like this one, and this is listen to music. So listen to your favorite songs. Pete, how is listening to music going to help me motivate myself to be more creative and create my own music? Here's what you do. You don't just listen to it for pleasure. I mean, it's still going to be fun, but listen to music in a different way. And here's what I want you to do. Listen to music, but pinpoint one particular part. So pinpoint the drums. Have you ever listened to a song and just listen to the drums? Or just listen to the bass line? Or just listen to the backing vocals, not the lead vocal, just listen to the harmony vocals? You will learn so much about song structure, about chord progressions, about bass lines, about rhythm, about melody, about harmony, just by listening and sort of dissecting your favorite songs. Now, some will say, Pete, I just want to listen for the pleasure. I don't want to have to do all this analysis. Fair enough, but you'll be surprised that even if you just try this on one song, your favorite song. Here's a practical story. I love the Foo Fighters. And when I was first listening to the Foo Fighters and I was first getting into recording, I thought, how does Dave Grohl get that vocal sound? I'm listening to his vocal. I'm like, it almost sounds like there's two of him singing. How does he get such a thick vocal sound? So back in the, I don't know if it was Google or Yahoo or Ask Jeeves, whatever it was back in the day, put that into my search engine, Foo Fighters, Dave Grohl vocal technique. And it comes back and it's like, Dave Grohl used a vocal technique called vocal doubling, which means you record your vocal part and then you record it a second, third, and even fourth time. You mix those together and you get this nice, thick vocal. And I'm like, oh, there you go. So what do? I go and try that. And it really works. It really does make your vocal really cut through a mix. So they're the sort of things you can do. Listen to your favorite music, do a bit of research, find out how they're getting particular sounds or how they write their songs. It may just help your songs as well. There you go. 3 practical things you can walk away right now and do, and will hopefully motivate you to create more and better music. Let's dive in now. We've got a heap of questions to get through, so let's jump in and start answering them. Once again, if you're here live, please put question and your question in the chat here, and I will circle back and answer as many of those as I can. But for now, let's throw up on the screen our first question. So this one comes about recording guitar. So recording guitar to your iPhone or iPad using an iRig or similar interface. So from Slick says, I was playing on a clean channel and there was a constant hissing noise, which also came out in the recording. I tried increasing the noise gate and looked at a couple of other things like the compressor, but nothing worked. How would I combat this problem? So this is a specific question, but it has a general answer. We're talking about noise here, particularly the noise floor. So any environment, any recording environment has background noise. Unless you're in a vacuum chamber, you have background noise. Now, when you're just sitting there, you can't hear it. But here's the thing. When you plug in a guitar interface or when you plug in a microphone, you are going to hear that noise. And you might say, well, a guitar plug, that should be completely clean circuit. But here's the thing. Any analog circuit is still going to pick up background noise and hiss and have that effect in there. The practical tips for this are obviously, 1, reduce any interference and noise in the background that you can. So make sure that there is no, like, as little background noise as possible. Turn off any air conditioners, turn off computer fans, whatever you can. And then the other side of it is, if you are getting significant hiss and noise and you're using an analog interface, it may be that you need to upgrade to a digital interface, especially the iRigs and the analog interfaces that you can use to plug guitars and microphones into your iPhone or your iPad. They are going to have a lot higher noise floor than something like a digital USB interface or an iRig using the Lightning port. And that's because they're having to send the analog signal and then the iPhone itself is doing the analog to digital conversion. If you've got a digital interface, it does the analog to digital conversion and then sends a much cleaner digital signal directly into your iPhone or iPad or your Mac or PC. So if you are finding that the noise is becoming overwhelming, you may actually need. The gear is not always the answer, and it's not usually the answer to these sort of questions. But sometimes, if you've got some really sort of older analog gear, and you are finding that you're struggling with noise, maybe upgrade to something digital. It may help out. Let's jump on to the next one. Now, I wanted to talk about this because I keep getting this question, and this is specific for my GarageBand user friends out there. But it won't work, it just shows a blank file. When you're sharing or exporting from GarageBand on iPhone or iPad, at the moment there is a bug. When you do save to files, it doesn't save to files. It creates this weird blank ghost file that doesn't work with anyone or anything. What do you need to do? You need to tap Open In, and then wait for the next menu, and then hit Save to Files. It's a simple fix, it works, but if you are struggling with this, and I get maybe 5 to 10 emails or messages a week still from people that haven't found my other video. I've done 2 videos on this already. I may have to do a third just because so many people are unable to find this solution. and it's only been introduced since iOS 13. It's a pain in the butt, but yes, just hit open in and then save to files, and you will be good to go. It will work if you are sharing from your iPhone or iPad. Next question here. It's about iMovie. So as well as GarageBand and other music making applications, I also have quite a few videos about iMovie because music and video kind of go hand in hand. And because I make video tutorials about music, I can often help folks out with iMovie. So the question here is it possible to bring in music from Spotify into iMovie? So there's two answers to this. Practically, yes. So there are ways to actually get your music from any service into iMovie because you can import any WAV or MP3 or M4A file into iMovie. Spotify itself doesn't allow you to download those audio files because it's a streaming only service. So if you circumvent that by actually using a service, and I'm not going to give you detailed instructions, but if you find a way to get your audio from Spotify and then import it into iMovie, that is practically possible. You do need to be super careful because pretty much anything that you're going to get from Spotify has a couple of problems. It will be copy protected, which means you shouldn't be using it in your projects, and it will probably be breaching the copyright if you use that file and then put it up on YouTube or Facebook or anywhere else because it's likely that you're using copyrighted music. Now, if you're using it for your own home projects, for your own, you want to do some karaoke and you want to get a backing track, then I don't really see a major problem with that. So there are ways to do that using Screen Recorder, using some other websites and things that you can do to actually get those. But my opinion would always be to be super cautious when it comes to any sort of music, and even if you practically can do it, think about the implications of it. Don't be breaching anyone's copyright because musicians work super hard to create music, and they're getting paid less and less. So the more we can promote them by at least paying for the music that we're going to use, then the better off we'll all be. Here's a question. This is from Red. Red Loxon says, Pete, I have a question. I'm using Bias FX on my guitar parts and I use it as inter-app in GarageBand. The problem is there is too much guitar feedback whenever I turn the monitor on. Do you have an idea of what causes this? I hope to hear from you soon. Now, the answer to this one may be the same because this was a question about on the noise gate question, and the answer may be the same as my previous guitar question, which is if you're using an older analog interface, it may be that it's not creating the best digital connection, and especially when you're using distorted tones, it really does amplify, pardon the pun, the amount of noise that you get in your signal. You want a distorted tone, but you don't want that screeching in the background. And when I've tested this and I've used my analog devices, I always get a lot more of that noise. When I switch it over to a digital device like the iRig Pro or like a Steinberg UR22 that I use, then you get a much cleaner sound. So I would consider exploring and investigating that. You're on the right track though. You can try and use the noise gate to cut that down or record it with a slightly less distorted tone and then turn up the distortion afterwards. If you're using something like Stark or the Crunk V2 plugin that's an inter-app audio plugin, you can do things like that. You can record it clean or at least not too distorted and then turn up the distortion afterwards. That can also help you out. Do one more question and then we'll jump over to the folks live and see what we have as far as questions go there. Now, this is in relation to my new series. I've got a new 2-minute music tip series that I've just launched. We're 3 episodes in, and this one was about mixing. And the question here from Jay Copenhagen says, please tell me there is a way to make the touch guitar in GarageBand sound real. Yes. Now, there's not a way to make it sound real, but there's a way to make it sound better. In fact, I've got a video. If you search my name, Pete Johns, and then Better Guitar, you'll find my video about better touch guitar sounds in GarageBand. You can use this principle with any sort of virtual instruments in GarageBand, or pretty much any other DAW where you can do this trick. And that is that you take your guitar, so you take your touch guitar, you merge that down, or you export it out, or whatever you do in your platform, but turn it into an audio file. And then what you do is you create a blank amp simulator track, and then you move your raw guitar file onto the amp simulator track. You can then dial in different amp settings, add plugins, add pedals, add effects. You can even use something like I said before, like the Stark amp sim from Clevgrand or the Crunk V2 from Nembrini if you want a free option, and you can actually amplify or reamp that touch guitar. So if you use something like the clean guitar in GarageBand, it sounds twangy and it sounds kind of cruddy. you can go in there, you can then adjust the EQ, you can put plugins on, you can put it through an amp sim, you can actually make it sound not great or real, but definitely a heck of a lot better would be my take on that one. Let's jump over and we'll see what questions we have here. We'll scroll back on up. Remember, if you do have a question, put question in front of the question and I will try and get to that. So we'll come up. Sorry, there's lots of chat going on here. So I'm just trying to see if we can find any of the questions. So John Garcia over on Facebook does have a question here. It says, I've purchased, I have a UI12, I purchased a UI22 so I can double mic a guitar amp. I've been a bit scared off by phasing issues. How would you go about this issue, or do you think it's less of the problem than made out to be? Yeah, good question. And I'm probably not the expert on phase or polarity. I forget which way. There's one that's correct and one that people use that's not correct. But what we're basically talking about here is anytime you introduce a second microphone, you can introduce phasing issues, which can actually make your sound bad. And I won't go into a big technical explanation because I'll no doubt get it wrong, but it's to do with the distance and the way that waves work and the traveling distance between the speaker and your microphone, that if those are not equally distanced, then you can get these phase issues that can cause problems. My own personal experience is if you just use a little bit of trial and error, just set them up as accurately as you can. Listen back in your headphones, play a few test runs. The key to this sort of thing, though, is to not just record everything and then go back and do your mixing and go, oh, these sound terrible because they're completely out of phase. But play sort of a smaller part and then shift them around if they're not sounding right. And you'll hear the phase, it'll sort of cancel each other out. So if you have one guitar on one side and one on the other, they should both be pushing through really nicely. If you're finding that you're actually putting the second guitar on, like so you mute the first track and then you unmute it, and then suddenly it sounds worse, like it sounds lesser, then it may be a phase issue. You may need to tweak those settings. So yeah, there's a lot of, if you search online, there's a heap of people talking a lot more about using two mics, stereo imaging, phasing, all the rest of it. My tip is usually just trial and error. You'll probably get yourself sorted eventually. But thank you for your support, John, and thank you for your question. Question from Darren Daniluk. When recording metal guitars, is it best to lower every frequency, i.e. treble and bass, rather than increase it? I really like a good crunch, but I had a hint dropped to me to actually lower it. It's a really good question and a really good point, and it comes down to subtractive versus additive EQ. So subtractive EQ means what you do is you listen back and you find the frequencies you don't want and you remove those, as opposed to finding the frequencies you want more of and boosting them. So boosting a frequency is still okay, but here's the problem. When people start EQing, they start going, oh, this guitar needs more bass and it needs more treble. So they just, and then they go, oh, these drums need more bass and they need more mids, and everything goes up. And you go suddenly from having a mix that's sounding cohesive to a mix that is just like completely peaking out and is way too loud. Because remember, EQ is just a volume dial for your frequencies. So every time you are turning up some EQ setting, you are increasing the overall volume of your track, like every time. So a better idea is to find and locate frequencies you don't want in tracks and remove them. So use the inverse proportion of that. So yes, it could be that if you do want more bass and more treble, it may actually be that you want less mids. So maybe experiment with that. Experiment with what you can take down before you start pushing things up too much. And if you flip your head around and think about that of what you want to remove, therefore what you leave behind is actually enhanced, but it's not overpowering enhanced, if that makes sense. So you're like, yeah, I really want some crunchy guitar to kick through. It may just be that if you remove some of the mids, then it doesn't take up that middle vocal range and therefore it does actually punch through more. Hopefully that makes sense, but great question, appreciate it. Question here from Arthur says, do you still use DistroKid? I do still use DistroKid. So DistroKid is a distribution service that allows you to release your music to Apple Music, to iTunes, to Spotify, to Google Play, to Amazon, to Deezer, to, I don't know, every other platform. So it's a good service. It is $20 a year, $19.99 per year, and you can upload unlimited songs, EPs, and albums across every platform. So it's a really good service. At the moment, I'm going to be super honest, at the moment I'm getting reports that there's some delays. Not surprisingly, delays at DistroKid's end and delays at the store's end at actually releasing your song. So usually it takes between about 2 and 5 working days to get things uploaded, approved, and in stores ready to stream. It's been taking between about 7 and 14 days is about the read. I don't have the exact numbers, but based on the feedback I'm getting from folks, it's about a delay of up to about 2 weeks from uploading to release. So my buddy Steve, who released a track recently, he had that experience. It was probably, correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, but about 14 days, I think, from when you first uploaded to when the tracks actually hit stores, which is about 2 or 3 times as long as it usually takes. But with current things going on, with all of the reviews that they have to do, I know that they're all still working there, but with all the changes and with all the interruptions, yeah, they are having some issues with that. So keep that in mind as well. Let's see. Let's see if we have any other questions, and then we'll jump back on over. I think we've answered all the questions. I'm just scrolling down for the word question. Yep, if you do have a question and you're here live, please put question in front and ask your question between now and the next 15 minutes, and I'll circle back and answer your question. Let's jump on back to the questions from the week. So this one is about compression. So I had a 2-minute tip about compression in your music. Again, part of my new 2-minute music tip series, which you can check out on the channel. And this was NRedUp82 said, can I see using it in practice? Any video how to explain it in the best way? So I thought I would answer this because if you are watching my 2-minute tips, you'll notice that they're a bit of a rant. So what I'm trying to do with these is just give you some facts, some information, some motivation, some things to go away with. They're not necessarily going to be super instructional, but in the descriptions of those videos will be links to 2 or 3 actual practical instructional videos. So what I might do, and from the advice from this question, it sounds like I should do, is in the 2-minute tips, I should say, if you're looking for practical information about how to apply this, check the description for those videos, because it's not always obvious. It's implied, but it's not always obvious that that's the case. But things like EQing, so I've got a 20-minute EQ video where I step through everything that I do with EQing, guitars and vocals and everything else, but I can't really do that in 2 minutes because it wouldn't really do it justice to explain it all within 2 minutes. So if you're watching those 2-minute tips and you want more, then check out the description of the videos. You'll always find links. I go to a lot of effort. I don't know how many people ever go down there and check it, but I go to a lot of effort to put other related videos. So whenever you're watching one of my videos, if you get to the end and you're like, that was okay, but it didn't really explain X, Y, and Z, then if you go to the description, there'll probably be a video that will explain that. Speaking of DistroKid, which we just were, this is a question from Ricardo Thomas. Says, can one song be deleted from an album after release? I want to keep all of the songs except for one. No. I don't know a nice way to sugarcoat that, but no. So the way that DistroKid, Amuse, pretty much any service treats releases is as one entity. So if you put an album out there with 10 tracks, they are 10 individual songs, and people can stream them individually or they can stream the album. But you can't make an edit to remove or add to that. And I guess, I mean, there's a few reasons for that. But if you think about it, if your favorite band released an album and then suddenly your favorite song from that album was removed and you went to stream it, you'd be like, hey, Goober, where's that song I like? Or if suddenly an extra single appeared on the album out of the blue, you'd be like, that's really weird and strange. So the answer to that is no. If you release an album and you've got a problem or there's one track you really don't want that to be there anymore, what you need to do is remove the entire album. So take down the whole album. I usually wait 24 hours just to make sure that goes through and then re-release that album again. Now you can do things like use the same ISRC code for the album. I don't know if that would cause issues if there wasn't the exact tracks matching up though with the ISRC of the album. Not 100% sure. I've never actually done this, so I'm not 100% sure. If anyone else has any advice on this, leave a comment down below and let us know. But yeah, short version is if you've got an album and you want to change a part of it, so one track or add a track, you need to remove the whole album and re-release it. Continuing on. So I do a bunch of videos about editing your YouTube videos because a lot of musicians are actually putting out music videos and putting out other videos on YouTube. So I have a video about how to edit or trim a live stream or a video on YouTube. which I do with this very show. So if you've watched this show live, you'll know that I do a pre-show and a post-show, and I then chop off the front and the back, and the replay version that you may be watching right now, or if you're listening on the podcast, the audio version is just the 30 minutes in the middle where I answer all the questions. The rest of it gets kind of put on the cutting room floor. Even more reason to come and join us live if you don't watch live on YouTube or Facebook, because you get to see the whole thing, including all the mistakes and the setups and things beforehand. So how do you actually trim between a video? Well, the new video editor on YouTube is actually pretty powerful. You can actually edit out not only the start, so you can trim the start of your video, you can trim off the end of the video, especially good for live streams. If you know there's 5 seconds of you staring at the camera with a weird face at the end, you can trim that off. But you can also remove a section from the middle. The way to do that is there's a little split tool. You hit the split tool in the point where you want to split it, so where you want to actually cut it out. Then you just drag that section across and it creates like a cut section. So you're basically trimming it by leaving in the bits you want and cutting out the bits you don't want. Could be super handy. I've used it on videos before where I've done a tutorial video and I've actually left a cut in there of me just like breathing for 30 seconds because I didn't realize that it was still in there. So instead of having to remove that whole video and then re-upload a whole new version, I could just go in there, chop out that 30 seconds, and no longer do you need to hear Pete's horrible heavy breathing for 30 seconds, because no one wants to hear that. Let's move on here. Dari Zoe says, what's a good alternative to AudioShare? It's costing money for me and I really want to use it, but it's just $6. But it's $6. What's a good alternative? So AudioShare, if you do have $6, I think it's $6, $5.99 here in Australia. I think it might even be $2.99 or $3.99 US. It's a pretty cheap app, but I do appreciate at this point in time, not everyone's got money to spend on apps all the time. So if you do have that money to spend, grab AudioShare. It's a ridiculously handy audio manipulation tool. It's an audio recorder, audio converter, audio file transferer. It does a whole bunch of stuff and it does it really well. But if you want to do things like convert your files or copy your files or do things to your files for free, there's a few apps that I'll recommend here. One is called Documents by Riedel or Riadel. I still don't know the name of that company or how to pronounce it, but if you search Documents in the App Store, you'll find it. Free document manager, does a bunch of cool things for transferring your files around. The other one is called Voice Record 7 or Voice Record Pro 7. It also runs by a few different names. It's ad supported, but is a really good way to convert. If you want to convert from stereo to mono, you want to convert your WAV files to MP3 files, that can all be done with the Voice Record app. And the third one is the Lexis Audio Editor, LEXIS. Also a free app, also super powerful, a little bit clunky to use if I'm honest. You can do everything, but it's not like a slick interface. And the beautiful part about that one is it's Android as well. So if, like a lot of you, I know you rock an iPad for your music production, but your daily driver might be an Android phone, you can use Lexis Audio and get used to it on your Android phone and on your iPad as well. So there you go, 3 for the price of 0 because they're all free apps. Documents by Riadel, Voice Record Pro, and Lexis Audio Editor. All good alternative and free alternatives to AudioShare, which if you do have the money to spend, the developer's a really cool person too. The community is great around AudioShare. If you can afford it, go ahead and get it. If not, there's your answer, fish bulbs. Jan says, hi Pete, any tips for me when I plug in my GM10 XUF into my smartphone to record only audio or even a video? It works well with the effects, etc. When I do Facebook Live, the sound is not very good. Any help? Yes, so I've actually been on a bit of a mission this weekend testing out different interfaces and devices with Facebook Live on iOS in particular, because here's the thing, and many of you will already know this if you've tried it. If you use things that plug in via analog, so if you use your 3.5mm jacks, you use your headset, so I use this one when I'm doing Facebook Live a lot, just my earbuds, my JBL Endurance Run earbuds. If you use the built-in microphone, if you use any Bluetooth devices, it will work. As soon as you plug a digital device in there, like a USB audio interface or a USB mic, it seems to override that with the internal mic and the internal audio, which is a big, fat pain in the butt. So I haven't worked out a way around this, so I thought I would ask this question here and put it out to the Studio Live Today community. Do you have a way using the direct Facebook mobile app to actually use USB audio? I haven't found a way yet. but I'm open to suggestions. The good news is if you record your own videos, so if you record using the camera app, if you record using other video apps, it does seem to work fine. It's just Facebook, and I think even Instagram might be the same because owned by Facebook. I haven't tried Instagram Live doing the same thing, but if you have any experience with that, please let me know, and we will try and help other folks out, including me, get this sorted. Here is a question from John R. Says, not sure if you've covered this before or if it can be answered in 2 minutes, but bringing a project from GarageBand on Mac to iPhone. Figured out phone to computer thanks to your videos, but having trouble bringing a project back to the phone. It is making it all tracks just one track. Yes, so here's the problem, and I've mentioned this a few times before, but if you're new to GarageBand recording and you don't know the difference between the Mac and the iOS version, the iOS version is compatible with a Mac. So you can export your project from your iPhone or iPad, you can open it in your Mac, and it will bring all the tracks in, all the settings, all the everything. If you try and go the other way, it won't work at all. So there's your problem. If you try and export a GarageBand Mac project, it's not compatible with iOS. What you need to do is export it as a standard WAV file, just a stereo wave, or as stems. And stems just means each individual track, you solo it out and you export each one as a WAV file. That way you can bring each one of those tracks back into your iPhone or iPad, and you can at least then add effects, add panning, add volume controls independently on each one of the tracks. So not super handy. Maybe, hopefully, in the future, there may be an option for us to be able to do some better things and have some better compatibility, especially now that the Mac and the iOS world have kind of come a bit closer together around things like the App Store and what Mac OS and what iOS is doing. Your iPad's basically a laptop. Your laptop's basically a giant iPad. Maybe. We can hope, can't we? We can hope. I think we've got time for one more question here, and then we'll mop up anything we have on from the live folks, and then we will continue. And well, we won't continue. We'll finish. We've got a question here from Fitter Sisters. Says, is it possible to somehow carry out this process, but then convert the audio to a loop so its tempo can be changed, all using iPad iOS? Now, this is not a very well, I didn't put the context of this question, but I'll explain the context. This was a question around bringing in loops and creating loops. So last week I did a couple of videos where I showed you how to create your own loops using GarageBand and then how to import those loops back into another GarageBand project. And I mentioned at the time that what GarageBand doesn't do is beat matching or time stretching or tempo shifting, whatever you want to call it, it doesn't do it. So if it's 120 BPM, it's 120 BPM. There are apps you can use outside of GarageBand that can stretch time, that can contract time, that can move your loops around, but you can't actually do it within GarageBand at this point in time, unfortunately. So unlike Apple loops, which are in GarageBand, they are able to be time stretched and beat matched. The standard WAV files that you import can't actually be stretched like that. So again, if anyone has a simple way or advice on this, I know that Jade Star has mentioned EG Pulse before, which I still need to check out in detail. I'm way behind on that. Ricky Elvis, I know you've mentioned here iSymphonic as well. I'm also way behind on that. I'm a little behind on things. It's almost like there's this whole mobile music thing has kind of exploded and I'm struggling to keep up. Yeah, that's 100% what it is. But yes, hopefully in the coming weeks, I will be able to explore that in more detail and then circle back with some more response to that. But if you have any ideas on that, please let me know, pete@studiolivetoday.com, or drop them down in the description. Not the description, the comments. I do things in the description. Alrighty, let's stroll on back up and see if we have any other final questions before we finish up here. Clearly Epic is here, and you've said that, hello to you, my friend. You've said that you asked a question and I didn't answer it, which is terrible of me. So I'm scrolling back up, unless you trying to pull my leg and you didn't actually have a question. Maybe. This is, I can't find your question, Steve. You might have to ask it again, or you are just trying to make me look bad, which is highly likely, but that's okay. You don't have to try very hard. We'll scroll on down here and see if we've got any final questions. This is great audio, by the way. If you're listening on the audio version, you're listening to me fill while I'm scrolling up and down here on the side. We do have a question here from There it is. It's down further. Maybe I did miss it. Question here from Clearly Epic. I can't get my MP4 audio volume down that I mixed with GB synths when I export to my phone. Can't get my MP4 audio volume down that I mixed with my GB synths when I export to my phone. This sounds like a question for GarageBand users forum, Steve. Yes, a good tip here. Go to GarageBand users. If you go to studiolive.today.com/GBU, you'll be able to post questions and have conversations there. I'm not quite sure what's happening with that there, Steve. Your MP4 audio volume, so your MP4, so you got your video volume mixed with GB synths when I export to my phone. Sounds like a high level complicated question that we may have to circle back on this one. Question here. No, that's not a question. That's just a statement. But Tim Osborne does have a question here, which is, can you upload a mastered song directly from iOS GarageBand /iPad to DistroKid as well as from a PC? And do you use the free version of Canva to do your album art? Regards from Guernsey over in the UK. So, answering your first question, you can't currently upload from an iPad or an iPhone to DistroKid. It doesn't work. I've tried it a few times. Apparently, there's some other browsers and things you can try that may work. Every time it just says it uploads, but it's a 0 kilobit file and it doesn't actually work. So my recommendation for DistroKid at least is to use a Mac or a PC at this point in time. It seems to be the most reliable way to go if you have one. And it's pretty easy. If you've got your final mastered file, there's a few ways you can do it. Just upload it to Dropbox or Google Drive or somewhere like that. And then you'll be able to access it from your PC or use some of the Wi-Fi file sharing in the Documents app I talked about previously. That has Wi-Fi file sharing, or AudioShare also has Wi-Fi file sharing. Do you use the free version of Canva? I actually pay for Canva. So if you're not familiar with Canva, they are a online cloud image manipulation design software platform. Really good for doing things like album art. I use them for all the thumbnails and all of my other artwork for Instagram and Facebook and YouTube and all the rest. And I pay for I think it's $10 a month or maybe $12 a month. And for that, you get a whole bunch more images and presets and fonts and things. And you get things like transparent PNG support and a bunch of other things. But if you are using the free version, you can still create some pretty epic album art. In fact, if you search my name, Pete Johns Canva album art, I'm sure you'll come across a couple of my videos all about that. Jade has been doing some work here, putting the links down in the chat here to the apps that I've recommended. Documents by Riadel, Voice Record Pro 7 there, and Lexis is the other one, Lexis. Couple more questions, and then we are going to have to finish up here. AMMN store question. I was using Ableton before, and my Windows laptop broke, so I transferred my music production to iPad. Have you tried the transition? Did it make your workflow better, or did it cripple it? How did you overcome it? So I've never used Ableton, but I moved from, I've used from the Reaper DAW. So I use Reaper on my PC, which is a pretty standard sort of multi-track interface, no bells and whistles, but super powerful. And I moved to GarageBand. For me, it didn't cripple my workflow. It actually improved it. So with Reaper, I found that it was super powerful, but I was kind of overwhelmed with options, would be the way that I'd talk about it. So it can do anything, but because it can do anything, I found it hard to actually focus and make sure I did what I needed to do. So I actually liked that transition going to GarageBand. Now, GarageBand might not work for everyone. If you're an Ableton user, there's other things like Beatmaker 3, there's Core Gadget, there's Cubasis, there's Auria Pro. So there's other options outside of GarageBand. But here's what I like about the mobile platform. You can take your music with you wherever you go. So if you're out commuting not many people are out at the moment, but if you just want to make sure you have that complete portability, you can do things on your iPad, then pick up your iPhone, transfer your project, and you can keep working on it, keep doing your mixing and your music production wherever you go, which is kind of cool. And I do actually like the limitations. I know it sounds a bit weird, but it actually helps my creativity, not thinking that I have unlimited tracks. I know I've got 32 tracks, and I know that if I push things too hard, even with an iPhone XS and even with an iPad Pro, it is going to start slowing things down. And I actually don't mind that because it actually keeps things in control and in check. And I like things a little bit more limited. So that would be my thoughts on that one. But yeah, good luck with the transition. It's definitely an interesting time, and it won't work for everyone. I was chatting during the week because I get questions often saying, "Hey, I can't believe you use GarageBand. It's terrible. It does this, it does that," and my response is usually, yeah, probably. Like it may not work for you or for your workflow, and that's the thing. It just comes down to what software, what platform, what gear is going to work for you. And that's why there is no definitive answers. If there was definitive answers, there would be one software platform, there'd be one audio interface and one microphone, and everyone would use exactly the same thing. The beauty part is that we all have the choice to choose whatever we want. And what's going to work for you may not be what works for me because I've got different needs and wants and workflow than what you're going to use. So try something. If it works for you, great, winner. If it doesn't, no problem. You move on, you do something else. It's fine. I'll just see if we've got any other comments here. Yes, Steve was saying it wasn't printing his question. It didn't like it. Sorry about that, Steve. I'll see if we've got any others. We've got Sion here has a question here. Do you record your audio for your guides before, during, or after a tutorial? I'm finding a lot of my tutorials are really low. Do you record your audio for your guides before? Yeah. So I do it. I do everything on the fly these days, and the reason that I'm usually in this location is that I've got the audio set up really well here. So I know that I can just set my mixer and I can set my volumes all to the right level. I can hit record, and everything comes through okay. Occasionally, I'll have to boost up my volume levels in post production. So I use LumaFusion on my iPhone and iPad. Great video editing app. And all I do there is just grab the audio, and if it's too low, I'll pull it up. And sometimes I'll use a limiter and go to that extra effort, or sometimes I'll just go, I'm sitting about 5 dB below the peak, and I'm nowhere near peaking. I'll just push my audio up 5 dB. And I definitely do tend to record lower and then boost it in post if I need to. If you record too high and too hot, you can't come back from clipping, as you know. So the answer to that one is, yeah, I don't do any voiceovers afterwards. I do all of my voiceovers live. I just find that easier and more natural for me. And then, yeah, afterwards when I'm editing is when I'll tweak the volume if I need to. Hopefully that helps out. I accidentally clicked that one. Got to run, but I'll check the next one. Hello, thank you, LC Music Tracks. I missed you there, but thank you for being here. Question here from Arthur, and this will have to be our last one, and then I've got to run from the show. But question is, when transferring uncompressed files from GarageBand, do you send them through email? My email always says the file is too large. Yes, great question, and something that's super relevant. I've been doing some coaching this week, and I realized that I don't have a great video explaining exactly this. So I'm going to work on one during the week because one of my clients, I had to explain it, and then I sent a video that didn't really explain it properly. So I'm like, I need a simple video on this. Here's what you need to do. Export your final uncompressed file, and then zip it up. So make it a zip file. That's usually the best way. You can leave it as a WAV. I like to zip it because if you're using a project, so if you're exporting the whole project, you definitely need to zip it. Upload it to Dropbox, Google Drive, OneDrive, Box.net, any cloud storage platform you like. I like Dropbox and Google Drive. They seem to be the most reliable. And then send that link via email. Email, you never really want to send a file more than about 5 megabytes, 10 meg at the most. Email's just not designed for large files. So even if you're zipping up a project file and it's only 10 or 20 meg, upload it. And the beauty part of that is that then the file is sitting there, and then if they don't get the email or you want to send it via Messenger or via text message, anything you can send a link via, you can actually send that through. And then if you want to share it with multiple people, all you need to do is make that link viewable by everyone. So I did something similar when I created loops last week here on the show. I created some loops, I zipped them up, I put them onto Dropbox, and then I shared that Dropbox link on my webpage, and then anyone who wants to go and download those loops can now go and download them. So that's my recommendation for you there, Arthur. Zip them and then upload them to the cloud, and you'll be good to go. That is going to do it for this episode. We've gone over by more than 10 minutes again, so apologies for that. Thank you for being here. If you want to find out more about the channel, about how to get in touch with me, about how to ask a question for a future show, head over to studiolivetoday.com. You can check out my gear guide. You can ask any questions, and you can go to my FAQ pages. It's all laid out there for you. If you got some value out of this one today and you're here on the video version, hit the like button. That just tells me that you had some fun and that I should keep doing these videos. Until next time, folks, I'll see you on the next video.